Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, once again joined by Zepsi. We both do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but we don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. We're just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. Welcome back, Zep.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going good. There was a news story we're going to get into pretty soon here that kind of flew under the radar, but it really should have been the biggest story in crypto. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So what I'm talking about there is the story around the energy industry. It's blockchain for energy. And they're a consortium of different massive players within the energy space. And they announced something that has to do with Hedera. So let's jump into that. I'm going to read a few things from their press release. So Blockchain for Energy is a nonprofit consortium of premier energy companies, and they're thrilled to announce the launch of the B4E carbon solution, making a significant technological leap in emissions management within the energy industry. So at the heart of B4E carbon is the consortium's proprietary digital measurement, reporting, and verification DMRV technology. And of course, Zeb, we've talked about the DMRV in the past, and they're using this to facilitate tokenizing emissions-related data. This innovative approach ensures unparalleled emissions data accuracy, immutability, and comparability. The DMRV is built on Hedera Hashgraph's advanced distributed ledger technology, offering a secure and efficient decentralized infrastructure for data management and transparency. This eliminates the potential for greenwashing and fraud in emissions claims. So real quick, let's go over some of the names in this consortium. We have Chesapeake Energy, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil, Saudi Aramco, Schlumberger, and of course Hedera, and one of the platforms built on top of Hedera, Totem Earth. Now, the president for Blockchain for Energy said the launch of B4E Carbon marks a transformative moment for the energy sector, combining the power of blockchain, AI, and IoT to set new benchmarks in emissions management. We're not just tracking emissions, we're enabling the industry to make impactful decisions based on verified data and validated environmental claims. This solution paves the way for responsible energy production and consumption that aligns with global decarbonization goals. So Zep, besides these huge names, the thing that really struck me is, this is blockchain for energy. And out of this consortium, the only layer one, the only blockchain that's involved is actually not a blockchain at all. It's Hedera. This is highlighting the fact that our refi ecosystem is head and shoulders above other platforms. Now, it's taken a lot of work from the Sustainable Impact Fund at the HBAR Foundation, Wes and the rest of the team. They've really built the infrastructure that's necessary to move this entire space forward. And we're just leaps and bounds, like I said, ahead of some of these other networks. But what are your thoughts on this huge announcement that we just saw come out this week?
So I think, to that point, there are other layer ones, layer twos that specialize in refi or have relatively large refi ecosystems, but they are nowhere near the same caliber as Hedera in terms of the names involved, in terms of the throughput going through the network, and in terms of that sort of enterprise adoption, right? And refi as an industry is one that is inherently catering to these Fortune 500s, these very large industry players that need to decarbonize, that need to track their emissions, that need to offset their carbon. And so Hedera, again and again, each week, shows us that they really are cornering this market, at least on that high brand, high scale, global organization front. Working with some of the biggest energy companies in the world that all have their own sort of mandates whereby they need to move towards clean energy or at least cleaner emissions in their sort of own supply chain based on global demand, really. This is a solution that's being presented to them on the Hedera Guardian via Totem Marketplace, and again cements that Hedera is the ledger that will bring the balance sheet of the planet to the public ledger. And so I think the team at the Sustainable Impact Fund again and again outdo themselves, and this week was no different. So, we'll definitely be learning more about this in the future, and we'll be sure to cover it. But what a massive piece of news for The Guardian and Hedera in general.
Well, my understanding is there's a lot of NDAs that are around this. So, we have to look at, the future. When you establish a consortium like this, they're going to be doing a lot of work in the background. And I think that's going to pay off huge dividends in the future. By the time we know what they're working on, the opportunity is going to be passed us by. But just staying with the energy industry. And Zeb, we've talked about the DLT Earth website in the past, but, I really dug into it this week and it shows how much EDF is putting into building things on Hedera. So I want to dig into that real quick. And you can find all of this info at dltearth.com/case-studies/EDF. Of course, EDF is a Hedera Governing Council member and one of the largest electricity producers in the world. They have not one, but 3 projects they're developing on Hedera. The first one is focused on hydrogen certification and trading. With this one, EDF is aiming to bring credibility and accessibility to green hydrogen by first democratizing secure, transparent certification of low carbon renewable hydrogen at scale, and second, by creating and incentivizing a new hydrogen marketplace. The second case study is focused on EV charging stations and renewable energy certificates. This is the one we discussed that was piloted in Singapore. This project aims to establish a reliable and transparent system for tracking and verifying renewable energy sources used to power EV charging infrastructure. By adding trust using Hedera, this project ensures real-time tracking, matching, and secure issuance of renewable energy certificates. And they claim this innovative approach empowers electric vehicle owners to make environmentally conscious choices when charging their vehicles. Finally, we have the Hedge project, and Hedge stands for Hedera, HED, Google, G, and EDF. And if there's one thing I know, it's that enterprises love their acronyms. And seeing one with Hedera leading Google and EDF is certainly a good one in my book. And the goal of this project was to create a secure, decentralized platform connecting small physical assets like meters, solar panels, and EV charging stations. So this is a pure DePIN play with the potential for massive scale. So Zeb, what I'm getting out of this is Hedera is actually achieving what a lot of other networks are trying to achieve. These 2 huge steps within the energy industry of our first 2 stories kind of hit me like a ton of bricks this week. I don't think it can be overstated how impactful this could be in the future. But just going back to what we were talking about with EDF, what are your thoughts on them having not 1, not 2, but 3 different use cases that they're building on Hedera?
I mean, again, it exemplifies exactly what we just said before, right? The biggest organizations, the biggest energy providers have settled on one ledger, and that ledger is Hedera. And having spoken to Anya and the team at the Sustainable Impact Fund, it really does come back to being able to trust the Hedera network. So I actually spoke to Anya last week, and she was saying before she moved into the world of Hedera, the world of the foundation, the world of the Sustainable Impact Fund, she was working for one of the big consultancy firms, exploring how sustainability, carbon credits, this climate market industry can leverage DLT. And the one that it always came back to was Hedera, because of that enterprise focus, because of that governing council structure, because of course, sustainability of the network, but of course, the fact that it's proven at scale by some of the biggest companies in the world. And so I really think that this is an industry, as I've said before, that this climate finance industry that needs to scale from billions to trillions, as laid out by the president of the EU at COP28. For that to happen, they need something like the Hedera Guardian, and this again just exemplifies that even further. And the fact they've got 3 use cases behind the scenes like that is insane. And we know that they're going to continue to innovate as a very active council member. So again, one of the biggest energy providers in the world. Again, the state energy supplier of France, also with 3 case studies on Hedera, which is just, insane.
Another thing that kind of struck me when I was looking at the consortium for blockchain for energy is, we do have EDF, who is an electricity provider, but they do that a lot through nuclear energy and things like that. I am interested in some of these traditional energy companies like Chevron or Exxon or Saudi Aramco as a potential council member. So it's going to be interesting to watch how we develop in the energy industry. But with that, I think we're going to shift gears here a little bit. We're going to get into the HBAR economy. I want to start off with dYdX. So a week and a half ago or so, they had a vote to add an HBAR market to their platform. Now that passed, so we see the potential there of some added liquidity for the Hedera marketplace. I also want to get into, while we're talking about liquidity, we saw Saucerswap put out an announcement that they had over $300 million worth of volume over the last month. And that was, I think, over 700 or so different transactions for our smart contracts. And one thing that struck me about that is it wasn't a huge, it is a big chunk, but it's not like the majority of the smart contract transactions that are taking place, because we're processing even more than that, significantly more than that. So that was one thing that struck me, but still the volume that we're seeing on Saucerswap really shows that they're hitting on all cylinders. And with that, I want to get into some of our token issuers. We're going to start out with the Mouth. So we just covered them in fairly deep detail last week, but it was kind of a general overview. They did launch their token last week. They established a liquidity pool on Saucerswap, so that was good to see. But I'm sure people have seen the Loudspeaker, and they're wondering how you can participate, because there was, I think, 10,000 HBAR in prizes associated with the Loudspeaker over this past week. I think that number is going to go up significantly for the next week's round of prizes. So last week it was 10,000 HBAR, as I mentioned. I think the top prize was 5,000 HBAR, and the fact that that's going to go up even further, it could be pretty exciting. So I just want to kind of run through how to use the Loudspeaker. So to participate in the Mouth Loudspeaker, the first step is to go on the Mouth bot on Telegram with the handle @themouthbot. Enter the command /start, tap on the verify wallet command, and follow the instructions. Now, you aren't giving any permissions. You're only proving to the Mouth that you have control of that wallet. Then you can go ahead and post to X. It can be about whatever you want, but with the understanding that the higher the quality and the more popular it is, the more likely it will be to get votes. And make sure to check the keywords for that week. This week, you have to use either @WeTheMouth, #Mouth, or of course you can use both. The next step is to nominate a post. This can be your own post or someone else's. To do this, go back to the Mouth Telegram bot and enter the nominate command. The bot will ask you for the X URL for the post you want to nominate, and it will guide you through the rest of the process. That post will be added to the ongoing round of the Loudspeaker and will have a vote wallet assigned to it. The VMouth balance in the vote wallets is what will determine the winners. Again, VMouth is the platform's governance token, and it gets airdropped every day to Mouth holders. They just need to move those tokens to the vote wallet that they want to support. And you can check the leaderboard in real time with on-chain data using the nominees command. But be careful, it is pretty addictive. It's as simple as that, completely trustless and easy to use. So Zeb, they did have their INO, so that's initial NFT offering that they associate the tokens with. They had that last week, but we have some more coming up. We have the Earthlings, which is coming out on the 19th and 20th. One of the things that I want to highlight for that, because we already covered it in depth last week, is that they are going to have a snapshot here coming up. They put out a post on it that if you want to participate in the bundles round, which is on March 19th, they are going to have a snapshot to check for all of those NFTs that might be in your wallets. The very next day on March 20th, they're going to open it up to the rest of the public. So it's going to be fun to see how that goes. So I do want to say that since they did that airdrop and they're supporting HBAR holders, I want to try to support them as much as possible. So I'm going to participate probably in that first round, because I do have one of their founders cards, but I might pick up some more on the next day if there's anything left. The next thing we want to touch on, and I was kind of surprised by this, I didn't know it was coming up so quickly, is Hashpack is also going to have their INO. That's going to be this Sunday, I believe, at noon Eastern, it opens up. We don't know what the utility for the PAC token is going to look like quite yet, but I'm sure whatever it is, Hashpack is going to come up with some really innovative ways to use it. All right, Zep, so in a couple minutes, I'm going to get into an interview with our premier NFT marketplace. And of course, these INOs is one of the interesting and innovative ways that we're seeing these NFTs being used. But before we move on to that, do you have any thoughts on what's going on within our HBAR economy?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to see sort of two sides of this sort of token economy emerge, right? It's the utility coins and then the more sort of degen side. And whilst there can be sort of pushback on that kind of degen culture, the meme coins and so on, it is a core part of every other leading network, right? You look at Solana, you look at Avalanche, they go as far as, even in Avalanche's case, to actually invest in meme coins to fuel this economy, right? they've identified it as a strategy that's worth investing into to attract this, smart contract usage, to attract this liquidity, and then hope for that liquidity to then go into other aspects of the ecosystem, whether that's loaning, lending, into the Avalanche token itself, whatever it might be. There is a clear correlation between attracting that liquidity and that liquidity flowing elsewhere. And so I think for us to have our own iteration of that on our network is actually extremely healthy. I think it, paints us as somewhere that is not just enterprise centric, that it can, facilitate retail applications like gaming, like NFTs, whatever it might be, whatever it is that the average consumer is going to want to engage with moving into Web3 or currently within Web3 already. And so I think it's just a core part of a retail ecosystem. And I think to see us, playing a part in that and expanding that and growing that and seeing Saucerswap really take off as a direct symbol of that is, very exciting. And there's a lot of opportunities as we've touched on, Hashpack coming up, and there's lots of different tokens in their INOs and so on. And so it's really worth keeping an eye on, and doing the research there. But yeah, I myself own a lot of HTS tokens, perhaps too many. But long term, the more sort of meme coin degen side will be rotating back into the HBAR, at least in my personal strategy. So hopefully that's what other people are looking at it to do as well.
Yeah, there's no reason to marginalize either these meme coins or the NFTs. They're a very important first step for people to get involved with a network and show the power of a network, and Hedera is certainly no different. But speaking of those NFTs, we are seeing again how innovative they're using these NFTs for these INO drops to associate with their tokens. And the premier marketplace, like I mentioned, is SentX. And I caught up with Patricia. She is one of the founders of SentX to give us the inside track on exactly what they're doing. Patricia, welcome and congratulations on all the success you've had making SentX the leading NFT market on Hedera.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It's a pleasure to be here, and let's talk about all of this. It's really important for our users and for the community, so let's dive in.
Yeah, no question about it. This has been long overdue, so I'm happy to talk to you. So why, in your opinion, is a thriving retail NFT ecosystem important for the HBAR economy?
Okay, so this is for me the $1,000,000 question, because we all know that on ecosystems and networks like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, like Solana, there's millions and millions of dollars a day going through the ecosystem because of NFTs. So this, for me, retail and NFTs in particular, and now meme coins as well, is the greeting card of a successful crypto network. Because when you think crypto, you don't think institutions. We are not there yet. You think the users that are after NFTs, that are after meme tokens. It's what drives people to crypto, the ones that right now utilize crypto in their everyday lives. And this is why NFTs are so important for the Hedera ecospace, because I believe that we have the technology. The network is one of the best to be able to host NFTs. And now we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure. We will have the platforms, and we do have the platforms right now. So we will make this space a thriving one for NFTs so that we can see part of those millions of dollars a day flowing through Hedera as well. Because of course we want to see that it's going to be a success case that Hedera can present and say, okay, listen, I accomplished this with just a couple of crypto enthusiasts, because it's that you have people that are enthusiastic about crypto, and we are such a small percentage of the entire world population right now, as you know. And it's super important for any network to be able to approach an institution and say, okay, this is what I could do with just a couple of crypto people that don't care about anything else other than collecting JPEGs. So imagine what we can do for your business. And for me, this is a successful business case that we want to present as a network. So right now, we just need more eyes, more visibility for our NFT ecosystem, because we are ready, I believe. The platforms are here. We have tons of features. We have features that are not even present on any other ecosystem, and this is insane. So let's bring more eyes, and let's bring those millions of dollars towards Hedera as well.
There's so many great tools, from the base layer services of Hedera, but also the infrastructure that's being built around Hedera. And SentX is a really important part of that. And you've talked about some of those features. So, what are some of the features that make SentX stand out? And what are your plans to stay innovative going into the future?
Okay, so the one that I'm the proudest of in terms of features are our bulk actions, because with bulk actions you can do so much in such a quick way. Our current record is a user selling 490 NFTs in one single action from their side in this case. And what happened was the user added 490 NFTs to the shopping cart that we have at SentX. It then clicked instant sell. The platform found 490 buyers or less buyers that wanted to instant buy those particular NFTs, divided into 64 smaller transfers. If I'm not mistaken, in the background, the user doesn't see any of this. And those smaller transactions were submitted to the Hedera network so that they can be approved. So the background will divide those for the user. But the only thing that the user knows is that they added 490 NFTs to their shopping cart. They clicked instant sell, and in seconds, that was done. He had the HBAR in his wallet, and the 490 NFTs were divided amongst dozens of buyers. So really
So,
insane.
a real quick question. This is, of course, unique within the Hedera ecosystem as far as NFT marketplaces, but this confused DappRadar a little bit as well, and they were misrepresenting the numbers. Is this also unique within the entire crypto space, or fairly unique?
We believe so, because from everything that we saw, there's no other marketplace having this bulk actions at this level. And for example, on Ethereum, I think that OpenSea allows you to buy a couple NFTs at once, but you always have to sign different transactions. Like, for example, if you are buying two NFTs, you still need to sign two transactions. It's not the same way that it works at our level at SentX and on the Hedera network. And I'm not even sure if they are allowing people to do this, because it's been a while since I used OpenSea. Ever since I started with the Hedera, I completely forgot my Ethereum times in terms of NFT plays. So I
So
believe this is true for most of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's another feature that I thought was really interesting. Of course, HBAR is the standard medium of exchange within the ecosystem, but you guys are allowing people to buy things with other HTS tokens. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. This is something that we added very recently. It's the HTS marketplace. We started with Earthlings and their PH team. And the PH team marketplace, it's a bit different in the sense that we built that specifically for the Earthlings team, where the Earthlings team can list NFTs in PH team, and their users that have PH team can buy said NFTs. But now we also have out the sauce market, and the sauce market, it's for everyone. If you are a creator and have a collection on Hedera, you just need to add sauce to your royalties wallet. Our system will pick up within 24 hours max that you added sauce to your royalties wallet. And from that moment on, anyone that has an NFT from your collection will be able to list by using sauce on those listings. What we wanted to do is to create a way for HTSs to have another layer of utility, because right now you have HTSs having utility inside the project, and it ends there pretty much, because you either utilize the HTS inside the project or you buy and hold. There's nothing else you can do with it. And now you can use those HTSs that you kept and trade NFTs that you want. And it's great. I always say, sometimes it seems that I'm not modest enough when I talk about the features, but I'm so excited about them that I always say it's great, it's amazing.
You deserve it, Patricia. These are really innovative ways to use an NFT marketplace. So, what are some of the most interesting ways you see NFTs being used in the Hedera ecosystem right now?
I think that we only started to see the scope because you know that NFT network starts with the PFPs. It's the profile image. Those are staples and they will always be around. But for example, right now, we recently started a launch for an artist, a Mexican artist, launching music NFTs on Hedera. We will have things like, for example, imagine you have a production company, you want to launch a movie. Why not launch in Web3 or a short clip or a documentary and fund yourself that way? And I believe that we are going to have a lot more of that in the future. And right now we are just starting. I still see the Hedera NFT scene as a baby at this point, even if NFTs are here for 2 years, more or less, around that time. But I still see the scene as a baby because there's so much that can be done with NFTs on Hedera. And we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg at this point. Because if you think about it, you can transform anything into an NFT. Absolutely anything that comes to mind. You can have a bar of gold, transform that into an NFT, and transfer that bar of gold with the NFT proving ownership into another person. And you have their digital ownership forever. So.
And that's exactly what we think at Twidgital. That's one of the startups that I'm involved with. We give you the ability to capture almost any physical object and represent it in a 3D form as an NFT on the Hedera network. So we're right there with you. Patricia, is there anything else you'd like to pass on to the Hedera community on how to get involved or anything else?
The way to get involved with SentX, we are really straightforward for creators that want to launch a collection or want a collection added to the marketplace. Just go to our Discord servers and we have all the information there. Open a ticket if you need to talk to us. We are always available almost around the clock with our amazing team. And I also want to say that if it wasn't for the SentX team, this would not be possible because they are our rocks inside of the Discord server where most of our users are. And we also have SentX.io on X. It's our profile. You can also reach us there. You have Patty Alex with 2X's. It's my own X profile. I'm also available for anything SentX related as well. And we are working on a lot of things still in the background. I know that it seems that, but they already have a lot of features out, but we are working on so many more. Yesterday, I was talking to a community member and I was saying the issue with us is that we are still finishing one feature and we are already thinking about 2 or 3 other more that we want to add to the platform because we are always thinking ahead and thinking about more ways to innovate because the Hedera network allows us for that. It's such a complete infrastructure in terms of everything that we can build on top of that the ideas never stop flowing. It's insane. And for the future, you can expect more HTSs to be added. This is definitely a plan of ours. We are not going to stop with Sauce. I can say that this is already out there. It's still alpha because it's not out, but it's already out there. We are going to add Grelf as well as an HTS marketplace. We are going to add SentX. We are going to add HBAR wrapped USDC for people that prefer to use a stable token that they have to buy their NFTs instead of using other HTSs or HBAR. So, and the list goes on and on because we have so many other projects that already asked us to be added as HTSs.
Well, Patricia, I've been so impressed to this point. As you come out with new features, it's an open invitation. You're always welcome to come back. Thanks for coming on today and good luck.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It will be a pleasure and I will definitely come back.
So Zeb, there's all kinds of really innovative ways, again, that these NFTs are being used. We've seen them used with fine art in the case of LG, but we're seeing that continue with another announcement that came out this week with WiseKey. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so at the very foundation of non-fungible tokens or tokenization has always been this kind of idea that we'll be able to turn sort of traditionally illiquid assets liquid. And one of the key folks of that, as we know, through the likes of DLA Piper, through Red Swan and so on, is real estate, but also a big focus has always been, also through DLA Piper, actually fine arts. So tokenizing a masterpiece, like whatever that might be, a Caravaggio in the case of WiseKey, whatever it is, and enabling that to be split into, various different tokens so that the average user or perhaps slightly higher investor in this case will be able to own a piece of that Caravaggio or painting, whatever it is, and sort of have their token fluctuate or decline with the value of that painting, but being able to sell that token representation of it at any point in time. And so the Hashgraph Association with WiseArt have actually now have an agreement to digitalize and tokenize over $500 million of real world assets in the form of Italian Renaissance art. So that's Titian, Caravaggio, Rubens, Rembrandt, some of the biggest artists of the Renaissance, which go for multiple millions and, pave their way through Florence, where I actually am now, in all of these museums. And so to actually know that some of these paintings that I see are going to be tokenized on Hedera is insane. And not only do they have that fundamental non-fungible tokenization aspect, they're also launching something called the Renaissance coin. And this is a artistic security token which represents these paintings that can then be traded and sold as investment tokens in the form of a security sort of contract. So really, really exciting to see this innovation. I think this is probably the biggest example of these, masterpieces being tokenized that I've ever seen. And for again that to be on Hedera is insane. And I think this is a criminally underrated announcement. So hopefully everyone watching this will share that. But yeah, amazing news.
Absolutely. This is another one that kind of flew under the radar. And when I hear you say security token, immediately Archax pops into my mind. I'm not sure where these are going to be traded. Was there anything in the announcement that talked about where these are going to be available?
It says that here it says these artistic security tokens, differing fundamentally from Bitcoins and NFTs, operate within a regulated framework. So I assume on some kind of regulated platform, as we've seen with, like you said, Archax and Aberdeen. And then it goes on to say this will provide a secure and legally compliant option for art investors. So I would imagine that it's through, one of those more private platforms. You've got a KYC, AML, and so on and so forth. Whether that's for sort of high net worth individuals at the moment, or whether or not that'll be on the open market, I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm sure we'll have more information to relay in the future.
All right, fair enough. So we're going to move from NFTs into Hashinals. This is something that came onto the scene really hot and heavy with patches and everything that hgraph.io is doing. And they have a new Explorer that just came out. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Hashinals is the sort of highly scalable answer to Bitcoin ordinals. And at their very heart, Hashinals enable sort of NFT metadata to be stored fully on chain. So rather than having to go to a third party like Filecoin or the IFPS or Arweave, where they have their own vulnerabilities, if we store all our metadata on a third party and that third party goes down, it would be a lot more difficult for us to receive that metadata or at least visualize it in a way that we like to on our marketplaces. So what Ordinals and what Hashinals does is store all of this metadata on chain, on the hash graph, using the HTS and the HCS. And this new Hashinals Explorer, working with Turtle Moon Command Center, patches, as well as Tierbot through Cantor codes, enables these on-chain NFTs and their metadata to be displayed in a visual way. You can see the photos on-chain, fully on-chain, and so it really keeps all of this within the Hedera network. So for as long as the Hedera network exists, which we hope is for 100 years plus, all of this information will be safe and sound. So it's a way of, ensuring more safety and longevity to NFTs on Hedera. So amazing work by Patches there. And actually, I spoke to Patches this week, and his long-term vision is for Hashinals to be used by multiple other networks, so Ordinals and Doginals on Doge. All of these networks that have their own inherent scalability problems, Patches wants to use sort of Hedera as a sort of consumer experience layer for these other types of ordinals. So he's got a great vision there. I won't go into it too much. He's going to evolve that over time, or rather he's going to bring that to market over time. I'm very excited for his vision there.
Yeah, one of his visions is that Hedera should be used to enhance all of these other networks, not necessarily compete with them. And that's exactly what he's trying to do there. We had a great conversation with some of our builders in our last Twitter space, the HBAR Foundation Twitter space we held last week, on some confusing things, maybe because some of the platforms offer a bunch of different products or because they're offering new products. And we had the Hashgraph team on there and they had some really good insights. I'm going to try to get them back on next week to talk specifically about Hashinals, because I know it's probably one of the things that people are still a little bit confused about and have some questions around. So I'm going to try to reach out to the team and get another one of those conversations going. But with that, we're going to get into Shark Bites. Now, of course, in Shark Bites, we've leveraged the Hashinals to try to bring in some questions. So you can definitely participate with that. We need to get a bunch of questions in because Rob's going to be leaving and he wants to address those questions while he's gone. So if you do have any questions around the HBAR economy or around the Hedera ecosystem, make sure to drop those down in the comments or use the Hashinals instructions that are up there right now. But without further ado, let's get into Shark Bites. Rob, welcome back. How's your week going?
Hey, how's it going, Brandon? It's going really well. I didn't get the wardrobe memo, so apologies about that. But you can't have enough Earthlings, in my view. So let's get into it.
Yeah, we're just fans. There's nothing wrong with over-representation, right? So, all right. So the first question we have comes from Bozer76, who asks, are there any other governance models in Web3 you like or that compare to Hedera's?
Hedera's superpower, as we often say, is the governing council. To be an enterprise-grade distributed ledger network, and one that is proof of stake and therefore needs this methodical path to decentralization in order to prevent any security compromise of the network. The governing councils fulfills that purpose. It's enterprise grade, it's familiar, it attracts enterprise, as we have seen, in order to build on that network. And so it truly is a innovative and transformative governing model, which has drawn on the Visa model and other kind of corporate and enterprise kind of governance models. So it serves that purpose. Now, in the Web3 space, there is a very obvious one that we could talk about, and that's DAOs. And the decentralized autonomous organization model was really kind of born. I mean, it's blockchain based, it's DLT based. It has to be kind of decentralized by definition. The Hedera Governing Council isn't a DAO, but could be a DAO. Right? And we're seeing lots of DAOs maturing and have been since their inception in 2016, 2015. Even in the Hedera ecosystem, seeing DAOs popped up. I know both you and I have been invited to join DAOs, and we serve a purpose where there is a group of people with signing powers over decisions, and the community that is formed within that group, within that project, then has both the power to vote and the DAO itself, whether it's been fully decentralized or vested in a smaller group, is charged with executing on those decisions. The full decentralization would be smart contracts doing that fulfilling that role. So we're still exploring what DAOs are like. There's quite a lot of work on DAOs in the kind of regulatory sense, and what is the entity type, the corporate type that best matches a DAO. Because if we're going to cross over into regulated organizations, entities that are listed or incorporated in jurisdictions which recognize them, so a government or for an industry to recognize a business, and it is a DAO, what does it look like? And those are largely kind of cooperative type entities. And we've seen quite a few kind of thought leaders and white papers around this. The Hedera Governing Council isn't a cooperative. I mean, it's an incorporated business in Delaware. It's got shares. Each of the Governing Council members have an equal share of that, and it is set up to govern the network. But it's also set up to sign transactions, to make decisions and sign transactions, as well as hosting nodes and doing the fulfilling the business of the LLC, the Hedera Governing Council, as opposed to the rest of the Hedera ecosystem, the foundations, etc. So one could see an evolution of the Governing Council into a DAO. I actually think that would be a good thing as we progress through kind of community nodes and associated entities that aren't on the Governing Council but could be. And so what does the governance model in the future look like? It's not set in stone. The Governing Council often votes on changes to its charter or changes to the committee charters. And that's an ever-evolving space for it. So, my personal opinion, and this isn't as a Governing Council member, it's as an individual, I would like to see that direction of travel. I'd like to see, greater engagement, not only at the level of, voting and transaction signing, and we do get a lot of good engagement with Governing Council members, but that then extending into the community, extending into partners, extending into the wider community as well over time. When you're a 100-year network, you've got time to do that. But I actually think it's one of the things that we're very well placed to do. Networks that have DAOs to make decisions are often obscure the fact that there are big bag holders that carry a lot of weight, and therefore the governance is just a little bit poor. An example of that would be the Helium decision to move to Solana. We saw that it was DAO based, and therefore it looked like it was governed, but actually it was just a handful of very heavy bag holders in Solana that were actually also Helium participants, and therefore swung the votes. And that's not good governance. And we pride ourselves on good governance. And part of good governance is actually an understanding that things change and one has to evolve. And there's nothing that's evolving faster than the Web3 space. So the Governing Council needs to evolve in a similar way. But to answer the question directly, other than DAOs, and DAOs are evolving, Hedera Governing Council and governance is best in class right now. And we are evolving quickly to keep up with evolutions in the Web3 space.
Yeah, just to continue on that a little bit, I think the closest thing to the Hedera Governing Council was the Libra Council from Facebook, and obviously that didn't work out, and it was probably a copy of the Hedera Governing Council in the first place. Currently, as far as networks that are our size or larger or, in that realm, you have the Polygon Council, which was just announced, but it's not nearly as impressive as what Hedera has put together.
It's just selected people, isn't it?
Sure.
It's interested parties. Mm-hmm. Individuals. The purpose of the Governing Council is actually not that necessarily, but the fact that all of these top end of town Fortune 500 organizations and their peers bring with them an understanding of what true corporate governance is. And so you're inheriting the governance into this Governing Council. So it's governance squared, if you like.
Well covered. All right, so the next one we have is from Dumb Kid. He says, Brandon, can you please address this question? It's a hypothetical question. Suppose Hedera went the way of ETH. Instead of the Governing Council, it allowed every Joe with a computer to start a node and launched at the same time as ETH. Could it have ruled the world by now without bottlenecks? What are your thoughts, Rob?
Could it have ruled the world? This assumes we're not ruling the world. I don't think we're quite there yet, but... ETH was launched in 2015, July 2015. Hedera's public launch was September 2019. So they got a 4-year head start on us. In fact, they got a 4-year head start on the rest of the industry. Those of us who were around then, it was really innovative. Pre-Ethereum, there were no smart contracts, obviously. There were a lot of Bitcoin lookalikes. And there were lookalikes because of open source. So, just a few tweaks to parameters and a new name, and all of a sudden you've got a new blockchain. Ethereum changed all that, the programmability of it, the ability to tokenize things and create the sorts of blockchains that we now know was hugely innovative back in 2015. So that 4 years, that first mover advantage, the challenges that Ethereum have gone through, that move from proof of work to proof of stake, and all the other kind of evolution that's been in that space has driven, the wider Web3 space forward, and we can't deny that. Hedera, built from first principles, not a copycat, designed and invented by Lehman Bed to address similar problems, but not the same ones as was originated back in that Bitcoin white paper in 2008. Led us to a different type of network. It led us to the hash graph. It led us to the governance model I've just talked about, and everything else. But 4 years is a long time in this space, and the adoption, the liquidity, the integration and infrastructure that sort of surrounds Ethereum demonstrates that 4 years was really, really important. I think in 4 years' time we will absolutely have surpassed certainly the utility and usage of Ethereum. I think we're already there, to be honest. In terms of transactions per second, we know it's mainly one big use case, but I think that one big use case actually hides a lot of community engagement, a lot of community building, a lot of projects now coming to market that are just getting traction, and that's wonderful to see. And real world use cases, the karate combats, the calyxes, the earthlings, the engagement that we're seeing across the board with the bank socials and the tune FMs and the infrastructure like HBAR Suite and Kabila and SentX and Saucerswap. This is all utility. This is true utility, and so that's only going to be exponential through this next 1, 2, 3, 4 years. This next bull run is going to see an explosion of usage. Just to address the question directly, I know I've gone off on one there. There are differences, right? We were proof of stake from the beginning. If you're a proof of stake network, you need your token distributed widely enough. You need the price to be high enough that no bad actors can accumulate and compromise the network, because then it's game over, right? And if you're a 100-year network, then it's absolutely imperative that you take a controlled and methodical approach to building this network. In 2019, 2018, 2017, there were, proof of stake networks were being launched all the time. Many have died, right? For this very reason, that they've been compromised, or they've been taken over, or they've not found their community to use it. And so they've not survived. We're still there, right? We're still in there. We're still one of the top layer one networks. And so proof of stake requires time to establish, to distribute, and to build, and build true utility. And then that generates revenue, and that then makes it self-sustaining. So all of these parameters need to be in place. The Hedera nodes are pretty heavy as well. So, every Joe with a computer isn't going to be able to run it. Over time, I think we'll get a lot more efficient and smaller, but to do that kind of transactional throughput is pretty heavyweight. So, that's another consideration. I think we'll get to community nodes, and that will drive further efficiency. And then, as we go further and further into that kind of decentralization, I suspect it'll become a lot more normal for Joe and Rob and Brandon to run our own nodes, especially with Moore's law and the increase in power of these devices that we have around us. But in 2015, I don't think that would have been possible. So I think we're exactly where we need to be, like a good wizard. We're in the right place at the right time, and we're exactly where we need to be. And I'm very, very excited about this next phase. The roadmap that Swirls Labs has published and executing, what TechCom is overseeing in terms of the core engineering of the network, and then the growth of the projects, the hips that are feeding back into it. We're in a very different place to where Ethereum is with its and all the other similar blockchain networks with their trilemma constraints and their compromises and their trade-offs. We don't have that. We're ready, and we've taken since 2019, so just over 4 years to get there. It's you don't get there overnight.
And what we've done over the past few years, I can't imagine what the difference is going to be another 3 or 4 years down the line. We're really
100%.
progressing quickly.
And the other thing is, we have to, decisions were taken in those early days, and we mustn't forget this. It was a very different, well, it actually wasn't very different space. There was so little regulatory clarity that decisions were made in order that HBAR would never be considered a security and is only a utility coin. And when you look at many of the the SEC cases against other cryptos, we've never been on that list for very good reason. So, you've got Cardano and Solana and Polygon and Cosmos and, Flow and Near and Ripple and Dash and Algorand. They've all been named, and many, many others, right? HBAR never has. And, whatever comes of that, those cases, and it doesn't seem to have affected prices at all, of course, but whatever comes of those cases, the HBAR has been set out to be a true utility token and crypto. Those decisions seem to be bearing fruit, but it also leads us to certain kind of inhibitions, I guess, around how we execute on some of those promises. And it is slow and methodical, and there's a lot of policy related work and engagement with governments, and no shilling by the operators of the network, and all those other kind of Howey test things, which need to be followed through on. It's not something you just do once and then forget about. You have to kind of continue doing that, and that's frustrating, But when you're talking to enterprises day in, day out, like I do, it's also quite comforting for them that we can point to those things. So we all would like to go a million miles an hour, but I think it's like I said, we're in the right place and exactly where Hedera needs to be right now, and we'll play our game and not everyone else's game, and we'll excel at it.
Good stuff. All right. So we have a few from OakBZ question regarding more info and transparency on governing council use cases. I understand the NDAs, competition, etc., but at this point, governing council members have renewed after 3 years on the council. Wouldn't that indicate they're at least 3 years ahead of any potential competitor? Should governing council members and grant receivers be more vocal about their use cases and about building on Hedera to general mainstream media as part of the requirements of their grants?
The difference between startups that are desperate for media attention, largely because they've got one eye on the next funding round. Grants only get you so far, so you're always looking for investment. You're looking for a pre-series A or an A or even a B round. So they love the media attention. Not so much with enterprise, right? They're very controlled. They've got a brand to protect. They have media and comms teams and comms and media policies to adhere to. So, and lots of hoops to jump through before even, a very simple announcement is made. And that's especially the case in regulated industries or publicly listed companies, right? Where any announcement can be market moving and they have to be really, really careful about what they say and when. So with all of that in mind, just talking about, use cases can be quite problematic. It's certainly in advance of the going live. And as we know, enterprise use cases take a long time. There's lots of internal navigation to do, alignment with strategy, product and risk, and everything else to be accepted. Other than just innovative thought leadership and discovery, which proofs of concept, most companies are happy to talk about if they're not commercially sensitive or not going to hit any of the other hurdles that I've talked about. So it's like I said, similar answer to the first question, but at another scale when you're talking about enterprise. Should governing council members be more vocal about their use cases? I think they are. We don't have now, with 32 governing council members and this new kind of batch of quite engaged, vocal members that we talk about week in, week out. I think those use cases are becoming more prevalent. So, Mondelez have talked about their use cases with SkewX, BitGo, very open about what they're doing, and have interviewed Hitachi. Again, very open about the sorts of things they're looking at and the use cases that they're exploring. And then, of course, we've got all of the OG governing council members and the ones before that have actually got to the point of launching product. So, like Aberdeen and DLA Piper, and we talked about EDF and all the EDF renewable energy and Guardian-based projects that they're running. So, they're coming along, right? But we can't force the pace on enterprise and governing council announcements for all the reasons that I've just said. At some point, we'll just get a relentless wave of announcements from the enterprise end, like we do from the the startup and community end. There's plenty to talk about, but these big use cases will just quietly come in, and someone will talk about it, and we'll see a bit of an uplift on the network, and then. This is the nature of things. The community will go, yeah, okay, and what's next, right? And they'll want the next announcement, right? They'll bank that one, and they'll want something else. So it will that will come, I'm sure.
Sure. And OakBZ has another one. He says, Hedera and the rest of the crypto industry is still in its infancy, and already I have 10 different Hedera ecosystem tokens associated in my wallet. Is there any worry that every company use case will have its own token, and you'll eventually have a wallet full of hundreds or thousands of different tokens? Seems like it could get overwhelming very quickly. I wish more use case companies would just stick to using HBAR instead of creating their own tokens. Or is this a pipe dream?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of tokens, but that's by design, right? When we first started the HBAR Foundation, we talked a lot about the creation of the token economy, the HBAR economy and the token economy. The release of the Hedera token service actually made it super simple and super cheap to create tokens on the Hedera network. So it's no surprise really that projects are kind of embracing that and creating their own tokens. Now, some projects would probably be just better off using HBAR. Every project could use HBAR, and that's the like you say, Brandon, the numeraire of the Hedera ecosystem. This is the reserve currency of all the Hedera projects. But there are reasons to use the HTS. It's and to create a token that is a fungible token rather than the non-fungible ones. To create a fungible token that is the community coin, the glue that binds a set of users around a particular platform, and can be used for innovative, interesting, sometimes crazy things, right? A utility coin that carries value, but can also receive rewards. It can receive airdrops. It can receive just holding it demonstrates usage of a platform. And we want people to use all of the platform, all of the solutions in Hedera. We want this growth in the Hedera ecosystem, all these amazing and very diverse projects, to be the place that Hedera citizens and HBARbarians camp out, right? We use Galaxy and Karate Combat and SentX and and all the others, and Bank Social, etc., and don't need to go anywhere else. Now, if those platforms have tokens, then we have a lot of tokens in our wallets, and it's true. You get a lot of tokens, and if you're participating in DeFi, you get your liquidity pool tokens as well, and you get hundreds of those, and everything you associate obviously shows up. So I think we'll get better tools that enable us to filter and group and manage the tokens within our wallets. I personally have different wallets for different uses. That's kind of one way of separating things out, but of course that's more effort as well. So I think, the tools will probably follow to enable us to manage our tokens better. But the tokens that we hold and the tokens that we use are very unique to the individual. So it's like a digital fingerprint. very unique. And I think that's valuable as well. It will be valuable to, and I suspect monetizable over time for the individual to share that sort of information and receive, rewards for having done that. So, I mean, there's lots of benefits of Web3 token holding, apart from the downside of having 1,000 in your wallet to sift through.
And while the HBAR is very useful, just like the reserve currency of the world, the US dollar, it's very useful. You want to have that customizability for these tokens, so they can have their own tokenomics for a certain project.
Yeah.
They can have their own tools, whether it's a wipe key, whether it's a special fee or something along those lines, to make it more useful for that specific use case. So both sides of it, I would like to see the HBAR used more in a lot of applications, but these tokens are going to be important as well. All right, and we have one more from OakBZ. He says, with all of this in mind that you just covered, is there any alpha Rob can drop on AP Plus?
Awesome question. So yes, but not quite yet. I'm hoping to be able to share a lot more of what we're doing in Australian Payments Plus pretty soon. But there's a couple of reasons I can't talk about it openly right now. I'm away for a couple of weeks, and hopefully on the other side, we'll be able to start getting into the projects that we've been running, the strategy that I'm setting for the Australian payments industry, and the sorts of things that to expect in the not too distant future.
All right, and we have one more question from Babushka. He asks, how long are we from a new massive use case, similar to Atma.io, going live on mainnet? Now, on a similar line, but with a little bit more salt, Chris asks, what happened to all the large institutional use cases that were meant to send TPS through the roof? Only Atma there, albeit funded by free HBAR forever, it seems. What happened to the Coupon Bureau and others? Fair to say, Hedera has failed in its institutional adoption strategy so far. And from my own personal point of view, I see plenty of green shoots. There's plenty of things that are coming out. I think it's more timing than failure. But Rob, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's failed in its institutional strategy at all. I mean, we were very realistic about enterprise adoption, as I was talking about earlier. So, and those things, do take time. TPS is not the only metric. It's the one that everyone likes to see because, we're so far ahead of all the other layer one networks. And it's a very clear metric and one that we can be very proud of. But they are coming, right? They're the big use cases. In fact, big institution use cases aren't always high throughput ones. Aberdeen doesn't do massive transactional throughput. DLA Piper doesn't either. So it takes quite a large use case to move the needle beyond where we're currently at, and we only need 2 or 3 of them to take us to the throttle. 10,000. I think we've talked about quite a few that have potential to do that. So Coupon Bureau, the Babushka mentioned. Coupon Bureau has a pretty tough task. It's moving a whole industry. It's having to set the standards first. It's then having to onboard, big organizations to adopt this brand new technology. They've had a change in CEO, so I suspect there's a little bit of a reset. I don't know anything more than that, but I think it's an incredible use case. I'd actually like to see it implemented outside of the US. So the rest of the world doesn't have quite a frenetic coupon culture as within the US, but some places do. I mean, Africa has a huge coupon culture, so there may be an opportunity there to kind of bring that use case to other parts of the world. And talking of Africa, we've got organizations like Flutterwave that are going to do massive payments throughout that continent. That's going to take some time to deliver. We've talked about Mondelez, talked about an SKUX. That's going to be a really big use case as well, with lots and lots of traffic. And I've got a couple up my sleeve too. So, micropayments is the thing that's going to drive transactional throughput. And, there are a few micropayments use cases like Drop, in the US. They take some time to get established. You need to get the infrastructure in place. You need to get people with wallets transacting all the time, not just, once a day, in order to get a kind of a high throughput micropayments use case. But there are many use cases that could potentially move that needle, but it requires other partners to adopt it as a means of payment, and often a change in business model. Imagine micropayments on a paper page or paper second or paper item kind of model. You need that third party to actually accept that and change their business process. And sometimes, it's an entire commercial model that needs to be changed in order to do that. So, there's a few parties that need to kind of get aligned in order that happens. So, all of these things are, I think, moving in the right direction. Like I said earlier, everyone wants to see a big announcement and then is looking for the next big announcement and the next one. And that's not to, detract from Chris's saltiness, but there's a kind of realism that one has to understand. And then finally, the Atma use case, which no one should detract from. It is world class. It's a beacon on a hill. It's a North Star for the Hedera network and all projects building on the Hedera network, because it demonstrates what is possible, and they're only just starting. And I know there's this speculation around it being free HBARs from the foundation to fund network traffic. Well, it's one of the best uses of the foundation's HBAR, and it isn't. I mean, it's term limited, so it's not forever. And network fees come back to the treasury, so they can be used to sustain the growth of the network and pay staking and everything else, right? So actually, it's just recycling the utility token for utility in a showcase use case. I don't see that there's anything particularly wrong in that, until such time as that fledgling can fly the nest and be self-sustaining itself. So, like I said, I don't know the terms of the agreement, but it isn't forever.
Well, Rob, well done, because this one has been a marathon. We'll probably clean it up a little bit for the initial show, but I want to make sure the entire thing goes out on the podcast, and we'll get it out on X as well. But you mentioned you're going to be leaving here, so we want to get as many questions as early as possible, so you might be able to address some of those while you're gone. So make sure, if you have any questions for Rob, you get those questions down in the comments as soon as possible. We'll try to reiterate that throughout the show. But Rob, thanks again for stopping by. We appreciate it, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
My pleasure. Yes, I'm looking forward to my travels and continuing to answer SharkBite's questions wherever I am.
So, Zeb, I am going to reiterate, try to get your questions down there in the comments. We want to try to get as many questions as possible, so when Rob is gone, he can try to address those. So again, drop those down in the comments or participate using the Hashinals. All right, so I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. I'm going to get into Karate Combat. They have an event coming up next Friday that is going to be Kickback 2. The reason why I really want to bring this up is because you have to make sure that your tokens are in your Karate Combat app before next Wednesday. So I know a lot of people have their tokens in liquidity pools or maybe even on a centralized exchange or something along those lines. Get those deposited into your app as soon as possible so you can participate. One thing that I saw that came out is it looks like we're going to get one of our NFTs in the pit. We're going to have the Dead Pixels Ghost Club. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to be represented in there, but I saw the tweet, so I wanted to highlight that as well. The other thing that was happening on X this past week that really got me excited was we had the new president of the Hedera Governing Council. Charles was on there with Genfinity. Genfinity, of course, is doing an amazing job representing Hedera, but there were a couple key highlights that I wanted to grab. I got permission from Genfinity to show them on here, so listen in.
I think that might be some kind of branding issue or some kind of holdover issue from how Hedera was presenting themselves, maybe a year or two ago. How do you feel about how Hedera is going to be presenting themselves going forward, branding-wise?
I can address that with one simple example, and then I'll kind of tell you about what I think about the future. The simple example is you hit the nail on the head, and that's the exact reason that I was appointed as president, because there's a lot of polling kind of out there, and there's a lot of surveys done about what do people think about Hedera, and people think that it's a closed ecosystem. People think that many Hedera builders and ecosystem partners are arrogant, and I'm just being transparent about what the feedback is, and that it's kind of a non-accessible chain to the individual. And so those are kind of things where, I look at this, and coming from like a real community marketing background and thinking about this as a whole, yeah, I've dealt with a lot of enterprises. I know how to work with enterprises as well. But the thing is, like, people really have gotten the messaging mixed up between Hedera being an enterprise only chain. Like, yes, the quality is good enough for enterprises to use, but we don't need to do that at the expense of excluding the individual and the individual builder and the accessibility of individuals. So I do think the marketing in the past has been very enterprise heavy, which I think it's important. We do want to fill the council. We want to have people here that are building enterprise use cases. Eventually, like, I do see many more enterprises than just that are on the council using Hedera, and there's many today that use Hedera beyond that. But I do think there needs to be a focus on a lot of our individual builders and individual users. As you know, like, marketing in this space can be really tricky. It's tricky based on region. It's tricky based on what you're building. There's a lot of times, like, I'll see a lot of people put up a tweet and, man, I want to retweet it so bad, and they just had to put the rocket ship at the end. And it's like, dang, like, can't retweet that one now. Or they'll say, like, this is the best product we've ever built on Hedera, and in the future it's going to be XYZ, like, forward-looking statement, can't support it, can't retweet it. Like, it's a very unique area to be marketing in. And we can do a better job in a lot of different areas, but that's that I'm here to try to work on. We have a great team. We have exceptional ecosystem partners. And I think a lot of this kind of confusion in the marketing space has kind of disappointed a lot of people, but there's a lot of rules to follow. And what I will say is individual builders, people that don't work at one of our partner organizations or Hedera proper, you guys all have way more leverage in how you can market. So, if you build a cool product and you're out there and you want to promote it, like, yeah, you can go nuts, you can go crazy. It's just really hard sometimes to have, like, the Hedera proper actually support it, retweet it, market it on your behalf. Like, there's some real complexities there. So we're trying to work on all those things every day, hours and hours a day. My goal, I'll just say my personal goal without leading to any forward-looking statements, my personal goal is to fill the council this year. So however you want to interpret that, that's just my goal, to have that completed this year. I think it's something we've all wanted to do. We've all wanted to see happen.
And with that, let's go ahead and get into some network analysis. Transactions on the Hedera network ticked up a little bit to just over 1,300 transactions per second, with a max TPS of 4,300 over the past week. I've been really impressed with the increase in the use of our smart contract service, which has increased about 8 times from about 0.2 of a TPS to an average of about 1.5 smart contract calls per second. Time to consensus finality has tweaked down just a little bit to just under 3.4 seconds, and we created an impressive 100,000 accounts over the past week. Moving down to our fungible tokens, Wrapped HBAR again took the top spot, and Karate and Sauce stepped up a bit into the second and third spots. The meme coin Unlucky moved down to number 4, followed by USDC and Dovu. A new one I haven't seen before, Islas Canarias, is next up at number 7. I have to research that a bit and follow up. And after that, we have H-Suite and the Energy Trade token, and the top 10 is rounded out by the travel site Zenny's Xbox. As far as our NFTs, the Road Code Access card took the top spot, followed by Saucerswap's Liquidity token, and I'm really impressed by the Slime World NFT in third. It's here every week and seems to be moving up in the rankings. We don't hear much from that team since they are focused in Asia, but the mobile game seems to be making its mark. We still have a few of the Lithos Rant CPU NFTs making the list. I don't recognize the one in the 5th spot, Cosmos Node, but hopefully we'll learn some more about that one as well. Next up is the Hashpack INO token Concierge Collectibles, Valley of the Dry Bones at number 8. That sounds interesting, and the Zero NFT makes the list as well. And Zeb, with that, we're going to go right into DeFi. Taking a look at DeFi Llama, the total value locked in the Hedera DeFi ecosystem has dropped significantly as HBAR and other HTS tokens took a dip today and is currently sitting at $131 million. On DeFi Llama, Saucerswap makes up almost all of that, but HSuite adds an additional $6.6 million to our TVL pot. Taking a look at the yields on some of Saucerswap's popular trading pairs, HBAR version 1 is at 5.4%, HBAR Sauce version 1 is at 17%, version 2 at 70%, HBAR USDC version 1 is at 30%, version 2 at 186%, and finally HBAR Karate is at 46%. Taking a look at the HBAR and crypto markets, Bitcoin made another all-time high at over $73,000, but earlier today corrected and at the time of recording is at $68,200, down 3.8% on the day, but still about flat on the week. HBAR is having a tougher time, down 9% on the week and 7% on the day to 11.7 cents. 11.5 and 11 cents may offer some support, and we have that strong support down at 10 cents. This trend line has also offered support to this point, and I'm looking to 12 cents for resistance, and if we can break through that, 14 cents will be another critical level. All right, Zeb, so that's pretty much all we have. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on?
I think this week was massive for sustainability on Hedera, specifically on the Hedera Guardian with some of the world's largest energy sort of corporations or organizations. This again, as we mentioned at the start of the call, just really cements Hedera as the go-to ledger for any enterprise, any organization looking to offset or track their carbon emissions. The team at the Sustainable Impact Fund, I speak to them weekly, and this stuff I don't even find out in their calls. There is so much going on, right? They have so many things on their plate, so many amazing use cases with massive, massive organizations like this that it's almost impossible to keep track of. And I think that is the most bullish indicator an ecosystem can have, is when it's genuinely so difficult to keep up with news that it goes under the radar. The 3 EDF use cases, we knew about one of those, right? That is insane. And to know that they're continuing to build again and again and again, to know that the governing council is the best fit for these organizations to ensure the trust to be on a ledger, to me, there is no better value proposition than that. And for what is projected to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry, i.e. clean energy, renewable energy, climate finance, it seems like Hedera really is positioning itself at the heart of that. So I couldn't be more bullish on that ecosystem. I couldn't be more bullish on Wes and the Sustainable Impact Fund team. And I know that this year and the next to come will only get bigger. So this week for me, everything sustainability and refi.
No question about that. I also want to highlight the INOs we have going on for Hashpack and Earthlings. I'm going to get involved with both those if I can. We also have Karate Combat coming out next week. One thing that I learned is, of course, we have this Kickback 2 coming up. And then after that in Dubai, that's going to be Karate Combat 45 and then 46 coming up in May. And that's going to be a consensus. And I just learned that it's actually going to be at the same convention center at consensus. I've been saying this over and over that that's going to be the hottest ticket in town. There's all kinds of excitement around what can happen at night, and that's going to be the most exciting thing without a doubt. And I think the Influencers Fight Club is going to be going on there as well, so that's going to be exciting to watch. I'm going to be down there at consensus, so I'm excited about that. Beside that, we also have next week, I'm going to try to get that Hashinals space together. I'm also going to have a conversation with Ed Marquez about the new HIP around airdrops. So that's going to be fun to talk about that, because I think airdrops are going to become even more important within the Hedera ecosystem, and I hope it's going to be more HBAR weighted airdrops going into the future. The last thing that I want to touch on before we go on is to make sure you drop your questions on the HBAR economy or the Hedera ecosystem down in the comments as soon as possible, because Rob's going to need them as he goes away on his trip. That's all we have. We'll see you next week.